Hello, my name is Greg West. I'm a graduate forester. I graduated from Auburn University, Auburn, Alabama in 1973 with a forest management degree. I hold Alabama Registered Forester License number 961. Also, I am a logger and have been for a significant portion of my career. And according to the USDA Forest Service, I'm considered to be a Class C faller, which is the highest skill level that the Forest Service recognizes. Throughout Canada, I'm considered to be a QST, or a Qualified Supervisor Trainer, trained according to the British Columbia Fallers Training Standard. This is considered to be the highest skill level that's recognized in that country. The purpose of this video is to provide an example of some of the considerations and procedures necessary to safely and efficiently fall and or process timber, no matter what its condition might be. Anytime you may be operating a chainsaw, your personal safety should always be a primary consideration. And I have here some examples of what everybody considers to be necessary personal protective equipment, or PPE. And I'm going to start from the ground up. And I'm going to start off here with boots. I've got examples of two different types. The first one here is an all rubber boot. It has a caulked sole, steel spikes on the bottom for traction. It also has Kevlar across the top of the instep, as well as a steel toe. These are really good boots for wintertime, or if you know you're going to be wading in some water. Next boot is essentially the same type of boot, caulked sole. This is all leather, steel toe. Probably is a little more comfortable to wear during the summer months. If an all rubber boot like I had here before, these boots get pretty hot during the summer months, so I usually try to wear a leather boot during the warmer weather. Next up, we're going to move to your leg protection. I have two different examples here. This is a dedicated saw pants. These things cost about 125 bucks a pair, and they are lined with Kevlar padding here. It's sewed actually inside the pants leg. This is what we're looking at, is the inside of the leg here. Of course, this is the outside over here. And you can see how much protection is involved here. It's almost all the way around your calf, as well as up your shin and across your thigh. Another example of leg protection, and this is the type that I like to wear because it's a little bit lighter weight. It's a little bit cooler. Your legs ventilate a little bit better. This is an example of a removable pad that will go inside this pair of jeans. You can see it doesn't provide quite the same amount of protection as, say, the dedicated saw pants. But the beauty of these things is that these can be moved from one pair of jeans to the next without becoming degraded, I guess. These pair of pads here will cost somewhere in the neighborhood of $35 a pair. The jeans themselves cost about $35 a pair. So you're looking at $70 for this combination versus $125 on this combination. These are a little bit more cost effective, a little bit cooler to wear here in our southeastern conditions. I like these a lot. Going on up then, what we're looking at is high visibility shirt. In the woods, particularly if you're going to be working around any kind of equipment, we'll say backhoes or skidders or front end loaders, whatever the equipment might be. If it has a cab and has some kind of Lexan windows, whatnot, these windows, even though they're relatively unbreakable, they do scratch, and certain lighting conditions, if you're inside that cab and you've got a lot of scratches and dust on your windows, it's hard to see. So if you're one of the people that are on the ground, you want to be wearing some kind of high-vis clothing, not necessarily a shirt, maybe a vest, Those are made and work real well. I like to wear a shirt. The important thing is you want to see and be seen. Next thing is a pair of gloves. I like to wear leather gloves. They do make gloves that are lined with Kevlar. Same thing that's used in our pads here on our leg protection. They're a little flimsy. I have to, as a logger, I'm handling a certain amount of steel cable from time to time, and those chainsaw gloves just don't seem to hold up real well. So I wear just a kind of a generic pair of leather gloves. Next thing up here is a hard hat. This provides you with some multiple protection, I guess you'd say. Of course, the hat itself keeps you from, or at least deflects anything that may be falling from overhead or maybe coming at you from the side. I wear this all the time. If I'm going to be in the woods at all, I will have the hard hat on me. Earmuffs here. Certainly these provide protection for your sense of hearing, as well as physical protection for your ear. There are times when branches will spring back and may slap you on the side of your head, and these earmuffs here actually provide you some physical protection. Also, they keep your ears warm in the winter, but also on the flip side there, they keep your ears warm during the summer too, which is not really a particularly considered to be a pro for that situation. You also have a face screen here that lifts up and down. This value of this should be pretty self-evident. Typically there's a lot of material that's flying around when you're using a chainsaw, and these face screens really cut down on the amount of stuff that might be contacting your face. Next item of gear I want to show is a safety whistle. I've got one here that's attached more or less permanently to my suspender strap here on my tool belt, and it's located where it is so that in case my arms were pinned at some point, as long as I can move my head, I ought to be able to reach down and still be able to operate the whistle. I'll see if I can do that. Now, I didn't give it a full blast there, but I think you got the idea. These whistles can be heard much easier than somebody screaming. They carry a much further distance than the human voice can accomplish. Also, on the back here of my tool belt, I have a first aid kit mounted. And essentially what's in that kit is an ace bandage, as well as some powder. I believe maybe the trade name for it is Celox. And what it is supposed to be able to do is stop arterial bleeding. And this is an item that our Armed Forces medics have been using, I think, for a number of years. And it's reported to work real well. I keep this on me at all times when I'm operating a saw. You never know when you might have to suffer a cut. And hopefully with this kind of material on you, you may be able to save your own life here possibly. Next piece of equipment we're going to look at is something that might sound a little odd, but I consider my saw that I'm using to be a piece of safety equipment. This is true only if my power head is in proper tune, I've got a sharp chain, and my bar is properly tuned. If I can accomplish all three of these, the amount of exertion that I have to use to get a particular job done will be a whole lot less than if my equipment's in bad shape. There's no question about it. If you become fatigued, you lose focus on what you're doing, and typically safety items or considerations usually go right out the window. The last piece of equipment that I want to talk about, and probably the most important, is what's here between your ears. If you don't make a conscious decision to actually wear and use the equipment we've already discussed, if you don't properly maintain your saw, if you don't have your head in the game and you're not paying attention to what's going on around you, at some point you're going to have a serious problem. I hope you'll be safe. To begin with, a thorough assessment of the situation must be done before any cutting starts. Some common questions which typically need consideration are: number 1, any overhead hazards? In this case, no. Both trees are in an open area. If there are any dead, broken, loose, or hanging tree parts in those trees adjacent to a work area, these widowmakers must be removed or plans made to avoid working below them. Question number 2, any fiber separation? Fiber separation decreases the merchantability options for a given tree. Limbing and bucking become more difficult also. In this particular case, there is no visible fiber separation. Question number 3, can any part of the tree be salvaged as a merchantable product? Yes. 3 16-foot construction-grade saw logs can be recovered from the pine. Question number 4, how is the tree being supported? Part of the pine is resting on the black cherry's root ball. The top is supported by some of its limbs. Question number 5, is it stable? Both trees have a portion of their root systems remaining anchored below the ground line. Bucking the butt log loose from the root ball will be the last cut made, as the intact portions of the root systems prevent the trees from shifting. However, one has to be aware that as weight is removed from the tree by limbing and bucking, the removal of this counterweight may cause the tree to right itself or roll. Movements like this can be quick and violent. Watch the tree's movement, ensure good footing, and cleared room to work and escape. Question number 6, is slope an issue? Both trees are located on top of a terrace. The camera is located on the high side, where as much work as possible will be done. The low side is 3 to 4 feet lower and would make limbing and bucking dangerous if positioned downhill. Question number 7, are there any pivot points? Always try to buck as close as possible to any existing pivot points. This reduces the amount of shifting which might occur. In this case, the pine is resting on the root ball of the black cherry. The 16-foot butt log of the pine can be bucked just beyond this pivot point, which would allow the top to drop 3 to 4 feet, making continued limbing easier. Question number 8, what effect will the vines have? The pine is covered in poison ivy, with some vines as large as 3 inches in diameter. If you are allergic, learn to recognize poison ivy during both growing and dormant seasons. Loose or hanging vines also can contact a rotating saw chain unexpectedly, causing a kickback situation. Clear them. As a general rule, limbing is usually accomplished by starting at the stump and progressing toward the top. All limbs should finally be flush cut with the trunk to prevent any puncture injury to the sawyer. First, remove the limbs easiest to reach and easiest to read the binds. Work from the outside of the top in and from the lowest position limbs to the highest position limbs. Double cut large limbs by first severing them at a point with easy access and finishing with a flush cut. Do not remove any supporting limbs until needed to lower the tree. Supporting limbs are always under extreme tension and compression forces, and the sawyer must be able to safely relieve them. A sharp chain making the necessary cuts with the far end of the guide bar works the best. Very shallow or nipping cuts are typically used on the compression side of the limb. This requires some experience and practice to read the binds and make the cuts without pinching the guide bar. When bucking storm damage, a relatively long guide bar is advantageous, as the sawyer can be further away when the pieces separate. Many unusual binds can be present in blowdown, and any additional distance gained away from the work may be just enough to prevent injury or worse. Bucking the offside first as deeply as possible is an effective technique to gain even more distance away from the work. In conclusion, no two trees or situations are exactly the same. What works in one example may not be appropriate for a different tree or scenario. A cookbook or one-size-fits-all approach is a dangerous road to travel. Inexperienced or untrained sawyers are particularly susceptible to injury when working storm damage. Chainsaw injuries are expensive financially as well as from the standpoint of lost productivity. All workmen's compensation carriers recommend quality training from a competent instructor. This is just common sense. If any workers within your organization ever operate chainsaws, they will benefit from the training and supervised practice I can provide. Only one accident or injury prevented will make this training the best money ever spent.